kitty cat. Aww.
Hey, boy. He's a big chonker.
Okay.
Big chonky baby.
Focus. Admin
Okay,
stuff.
go ahead. Yes.
Stop distracting me.
Sorry.
Gosh. This is the All Guild meeting for Chaos Force 23.5, the year that wasn't. We will be facilitated by Master Anij. This meeting will go until 4 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. If it runs long, you are welcome to continue it in the Chaos Wars Discord server. Go ahead, Master Anij.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, we try and have one of these at every major event if we can. Normally we have one at Chaos Wars, BFTR. Be great if we could have some out in the east as well. But for the time being, those are the two main events we tend to have them at. One second here. My person who's taking notes is trying to get in, is having an issue here. So, so first off, I kind of just wanted to do some quick stats on where the guilds are currently. I kind of did this a little bit in the Q&A, but I got some more specifics before this one started. So currently we have 3 artificer vassals. We have 7 seneschal apprentices, 2 chronicler apprentices, and 22 artificer apprentices. We have 7 artificer journeymen. We have 4 seneschal masters, 6 artificer masters, 3 seneschal mentors, 9 chronicler mentors, 4 artificer mentors. And then in regards to those that are still waiting for an open mentor, we have 4, and these are people that possibly are waiting for a specific person. They could be working on getting a master's application in and previously did a apprentice application. There's a few different things happening with these. But we have 4 seneschal waiting people, 3 chronicler waiting people, and 10 artificer waiting people. So that's just kind of a quick idea of what we're looking at in regards to the current status of things. Obviously, during COVID right now, the guilds have definitely kind of been a larger part of Belegarth, because crafting, event planning, in regards to online event planning anyway, figuring out how to run communities more online, chronicling what's happening, all of that is becoming a little bit more of a thing that can actually happen as opposed to fighting. So I guess the big question that I wanted to bring up as a topic for today's meeting was, what are ways that we can help the community right now? What are ways that we can use our skills to reach out, keep the community connected, and grow, if we can, but if at least maintain. So is there, I guess this is a little bit more difficult to facilitate, not in person, but does anybody have any thoughts on that topic, I guess?
I mean, I can hop in with the online competitions we've been running at Chaos Wars if you want.
Sure, That sounds great.
So this year at Chaos Wars Online, we ran 3 different guild-focused competitions. So Master Sven and I partnered to run the online arts and science competition for Chaos Wars, and we had 18 entries for that, which was awesome. And I just announced the winner. No, I didn't. I'm getting ready to announce the winner for that. So stay tuned on the Discord and Facebook. And a lot of that went into just making sure you yelled really, really loudly and really, really often to make sure people knew it was a thing, and private messaged people and went, hey, you should enter this, and tell all the other friends to enter it. And then there was a lot of background work for Master Sven and I of making sure the Google Forms were set up, and Sven made a Google site so people could have all the information in one place. And a big thank you to all of my judges who helped make that happen as well. A lot of tech side of it. And then we also hosted the online project runway. We had 3 people into that, and that has a lot more work on the crafter half because they have to find fabric not at a fabric store, and they only have 4 hours to make it, and they have to get someone who's not them to be a model for it. That one we did just announce the winner. Congratulations, Master Sven, on winning. There was only a 5-point difference between all 3 competitors. It was all of them are phenomenal, and we did the same setup with a Google site and being really loud and yelling at people to come and enter it. We found Google Forms was a great way to collect entries because they would just submit their documentation onto that Google form, and we would all have it in one site. And then the last competition we had was a gallery display competition, specifically aiming at more of a chronological kind of people to show off the photography amazingness that happened in our sport and to capture that element side. So we had 14 entries for the gallery display, and I am compiling the winners and will announce it soon. And this was the first year there was ever any kind of photography-based competition, so I'm fairly happy with a 14 entry number, especially since it's online, no one knew to expect it, and a lot of things like that. The gallery display is something I'm hoping to see continue when we move on to face-to-face competitions still, and to be able to physically display people's picture taking. I'm done.
Right. I think we had Anya next.
Hi. I was gonna say, I feel like we're doing really well with the crafting side of things during COVID. Not to say that we can't do more and continue to do what we're doing, like definitely do. I would love to see more lore, more lore, more lore, more lore. More lore. I'm gonna start talking with Garnet about Fae lore. So if anybody is interested in getting involved in that conversation, let me know. I've kind of gently more door, more roar. But yeah, if you are interested in getting involved in that conversation, let me know. I'm just gonna take the reins and run with it until somebody tells me to stop. So I highly encourage other people to do the same with their lore for their species or their personal lore. I will start looking at ways to try to put together lore competitions and stuff, because I feel like this is a really good opportunity to enrich that side of our community and then bring it back into our physical presence when we can do that.
Okay, awesome. And then we had Journeyman Alina next.
Hi, everybody. Journeyman Alina here. I just wanted to plug that I am going to be hosting a new event in November, and it's going to be called the Shannara Collegium. And this is going to be an entirely non-com event, and I want to have a tract for each of our guilds. I want a tract that we will have classes from the chroniclers, from the artificers, from the seneschal, and maybe even throw in a few combat classes just so that we can get more bodies. But I want to, a guild event basically, and have just a whole series of classes in November. And this year, obviously, it's going to be online, but I want it to be an annual thing. And we even have a location in Shannara where we will be able to host it in the future. And what I will need from the guilds is instructors willing to either volunteer to moderate a classroom line, or to teach classes and expand conversations and all that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we have Master Antoinette next, I believe.
I completely agree on the more lore. Specifically more human lore. I have been working with my guys and girls and people on more lore because I came before I was in the Juggernauts. I was in a unit which doesn't exist anymore called the Order, and everyone had to have lore. It was part of what we did. We had this huge world where we existed, and like different route. We had like maps and everything. I have them saved on my computer, and like the lore of it was really important aspect to me, and that's part of what I do as a mentor in the Chroniclers Guild is history keeping and lore. And so I really would love to see more lore. I would love to see just like Zooms or Discord hangouts where we talk about lore and we share lore. And I mean, the wiki's a great place. I personally have a personal lore website because I have an inordinate amount of lore comparatively to others human characters. And so like I find it really cool. And I would love to see more lore and like push those sorts of things, and like how we can incorporate lore into like events and happenings. So like the last piece of lore I wrote with the Juggernauts was how I joined them, which happened at an event and started with a cake. That's a different story. There's actually no cake in the lore yet. We'll get there. But like I took what happened at an event and turned it into a story. It's almost the same with how we take days like when Rumbeard goes missing, or Gaston makes a poor life decision in challenging Par, saying he can't beat him without a flail, and Scald and Rumbeard and Oroku turn those into songs, right? So like we can take what happens at events, ceremonies, big battles, and turn that into lore for the whole community. Someone's just got to write it, or it can be written collaboratively. It's almost like, here's my character D&D sheet. Now how am I going to get that turned into, like, who am I? How do I turn that into lore? How does that affect Belegarth? Because, like, Antoinette's a moose witch. She has, like, arcane fire powers that clearly aren't being turned into, like, real-life applications. But they're fun to write about. And, like, they show up in my garb with, like, moose and stuff. So like it's taking those little things that are notes in your lore, like how the goblin witch doctors have that red line of war paint that represents something, and I can't remember. I used to know. but they all have that, so you know that you're talking to a goblin witch doctor, right? And it's taking that part of their lore and putting it into like the real life aspect of like how you represent in your garb or your war paint or what have you, right? So like that's sort of how you take written lore and turn it into like real Belegarth application, in my experience.
Awesome, thank you. Anya, real quick, and then if nobody else has anything, we'll wrap up this topic.
Me again. Sorry for bogarting. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, it would be really cool just for visibility of the guilds if when we do competitions, we could just include, like, in the write-up, sponsored by the Artificer Guild, or sponsored by the Seneschal Guild, or sponsored by the Chronicler Guild, just as, like, a way to get visibility for the guilds for people who don't know that they exist still.
Okay, awesome. So kind of tying into like ways that we can help during this time, since classes and stuff is pretty much all we can do. One quick thought that I had actually this afternoon was one thing that the SCA does is they actually have like they keep track of the classes that people attend, and then they have like a university type system. And then I believe there are awards for when people have attended a certain number of classes and things like that. So I don't really know the details of that, but perhaps we could look into adding something like that to the guild so that we can start recognizing those people that are attending classes, teaching classes, stuff like that. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think that sounds awesome, personally. It kind of reminds me almost of how AmpGuard tracks like your class progress. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but like every practice that you go to, you get like basically points in a way. And that's how they track when you level up and get new abilities in your class in AmpGuard. So it shouldn't be too hard if that's something that AmpGuard does and something similar to what the SCA does. So there's got to be an easy way to implement that for us.
Antoinette?
So I happen to be fairly close with the individual who runs the Ragnarok University at RAG, and they do something very similar, in that both teachers of classes and attendees to their classes, and I mean like the RAG University has like 50-60 classes going on. It's a lot. And so basically every teacher gets a little thing that they are a teacher at the event. You pin it on your garb. It's cool looking, but you get every attendee who attends X number of classes. I think it's 10 in a week. They get like a fancy scrolly certificate thing. Mine's somewhere in some pile of paper in my garb closet, because it hasn't been framed yet. And so like that's sort of kind of in the middle of like how the SCA tracks like your class progress across, like I know North Shield does it across the whole year if you're attending different classes, and then you get something at the end. But we could just do it like event by event, or we could do it like the whole year. We could probably set up a Google site, and like people can just be like, hey, I attended this event and went to these classes, and like at the end of every year we could offer certificates to those people who attended X number of classes a year, whether those classes be online because that's our life right now, or those classes be in person when we get back to like being able to physically be in the same space as everybody else. So I mean, I think it would actually be fairly easy to do if we started setting it up now in preparation for like in-person eventing. And I'm just going to echo something to make sure everyone knows, if you are not talking, can you make sure your mic's muted? Because I think Len is getting some weird backgroundy noise. And that is not great for the live stream.
Awesome. Anybody have any other thoughts on setting that up before we move on?
Something that I've seen, there is an event in LA called Costume College, and a lot of costumers and people who do historical reenactments and stuff will go down there and attend classes. And one of the systems that they use is they basically, like, you have your little badge, and then for each class that you attend, you attach a ribbon to that badge, and it basically kind of extends into like sash lengths and stuff like that. So that would be something that's fairly easy for us to keep track of. Basically, like, if someone's hosting, let's take Chaos Wars for example, if someone's hosting a class, we give them X number of these ribbons to hand out to the people who attend their classes, and then there is a physical marker that, you know, we don't have to do as much bookkeeping, but we're still able to see who's actively attending classes. So that may or may not work for us, but just something that I've seen done elsewhere.
Awesome, that's really cool. Any other thoughts here before we move to the next things? No. Okay. So, kind of my next two quick things that I wanted to ask. Oh wait, could I? Ah, okay. So yeah, just Sia is taking notes for me. So if everyone could just make sure that their nicknames or how they'd like to be recorded in the guild meeting notes, that would be great. So real quick, the Artificer Guild is obviously doing amazing. We need to keep it going. Hopefully don't lose momentum, but it's doing pretty good. I'd really like for us to try and find ways to help the Seneschal and Chronicler guilds grow and find out, what ways can the community help them grow, but also what ways can they reach out and help the community. That's something that came up in the Q&A. And these two, the Chronicler is really young, so that's part of it. But the Seneschal Guild is as old as the Artificer, but it is much smaller at this point. So if we can find ways to kind of help those two guilds come along too, if anyone has any ideas for that. Master Antoinette?
So I honestly think part of the reason the Seneschal's Guild is much smaller is it takes a little more time in some cases to get from point A to master status. Because it involves a lot of like this many things at this many events, and if they can't get to an event in a year, it messes up their progress and things like that. And the projects that you take on for Seneschal projects, like that troll manual that I wrote took me 2 months. Wherein if you are apt at sewing, projects can take a day or a couple of days depending on the difficulty of the project or what have you. Cool, I didn't know someone else could change my name on here. But so like that, I think that's part of it, for like the Seneschal's Guild especially. And we have people who could be who are or could be masters in the guild but haven't put in their application yet because they don't really want to, even though I'm like, hey Betty Oroku, you need to do this, please do this. so it's things like that, and I think it's just a little less like I don't want to say visible because we are still visible, but like Gorlock and I are just gonna do stuff. Thrat is just gonna do stuff, and we don't really think about like not doing stuff. And so I think the visibility is a little bit different in terms of that. And the Chroniclers Guild, I think, just needs to grow up a little bit. And once we get some masters and those take on apprentices, like we have a couple, it'll just start moving. And the more people who want to do lore and photography, the more people that we can funnel into the Chroniclers Guild. Because, like, yeah, that's the thing. So, like, that's where I think some of the issue is in terms of, like, why the Seneschal's Guild might be a little bit smaller. Because, I mean, it took me, like, 4 years to get from point A to point B. So, like, I think it's just a little bit different.
And those are fair. I guess it's not just the like master and people in the pipeline as much as like even the amount of discussion that happens, the amount of just general guild members seems to be less. So I'm trying to figure out how we can help that be more of a thing, I guess. Galia, go ahead.
Hear me? Can you guys hear me?
We can. Yep.
Okay, I haven't actually tried my mic with the Zoom yet, so I wasn't sure if it was working. I don't really consider myself part of the guild. I'm just kind of observing. But I feel like from my perspective as someone who's done lore for a long time just organically, I struggle with the idea of lore being judged by peers. So I wonder if for people who are maybe like me who've been around for a long time and have been creating lore for a long time, it's kind of a difficult transition to move from, hey, we just kind of do our own thing collectively as a group, and then move to, hey, we're going to be judged by peers that were kind of just, I don't want to say picked randomly, but you know, I don't know, it's just something that I kind of struggle with in terms of like how, specifically for lore, like the Chronicle Guild might be hard for everybody to get used to that idea. So that's just kind of my thought on it.
No, that's definitely a legitimate question with that. You know, when we established the Chronicler Guild, and we were trying to find people and stuff, we tried to get a cross section of the nation, but how well that happened, you know. Looks like Sita had a note here.
Can everybody hear me? Cool. Yeah, I think that's something important to emphasize. Like Anya, I think it was Anya said in the notes, it's celebrating, it's collaborating, it's not judgment, or it shouldn't be, in my opinion, and I think in many guild peers' opinions, it's not an issue of judgment or criticism, unless it's constructive criticism that's welcome, and kind of promoting that idea. So kind of going back to my my hand was actually raised for something said earlier. What were we talking about?
Guild University, how we can help?
Come back to me. We were talking about Seneschal Guild and Artificer Guild and growth. So just quickly going back to that, Seneschal Guild, one of the things that I think we should point out and talk about is that there's not as much chatter on the page, and I think that was maybe talked about a little bit in the chat. I think if people can share their portfolios, share their progress, create some chatter on the page, that will really help with the PR and with allowing people to kind of understand what's going on, and kind of taking a look into the community and understanding what the community is about, which will help raise numbers. And I think the same can be said, moving back towards to the topic that we were just on, can be said of the Chroniclers Guild. Just really, I think chatter on the Facebook pages, any social media pages will really, really help allow people a view into the community and the ideals, and really just kind of the vibe in which we kind of collaborate with each other. I think a lot of people have this idea of what peerage means and what the relationship of peerage means. And it may or may not be how it is, especially in between individual masters and or like mentors and their apprentices. So I think anything that we can do to really give the community a slice of who we are, what we are, will help raise numbers. And I think that that's something that has naturally happened with the Artificer Guild, because the things that we create are so much more tangible in some ways, and easier to share, like work in progress photos and stuff. There, it's just a little bit more concrete and intuitive. But I think that there are certainly ways to share the progress and kind of celebrate the progress on the other pages as well with the other guilds. I think that will really help boost numbers.
Okay, awesome. I believe Garnet had something after you.
I do. Sorry, I forgot to remute myself. It's probably my fan that people are hearing, and I'm sorry, I completely forgot. So one thing I definitely think Sita touched on is the thing about the Artificer Guild is that it's super easy to grow because people are making things for themselves and sharing pictures of it, and that is such an easy, quick thing to post and get people's reactions and encouragement from. Like if I, make a thing and I'm like, look at my thing that I made, or look at what I'm working on, and then I post that to the Artificer Guild page, people are automatically going to be like, oh, that's really cool. What are you making that for? Blah, blah, blah. It's really quick and easy. Whereas if I'm like, oh, I wrote a bunch of elemental lore, people are probably not going to react to that at all. And if they do, they'll like it, but they won't go read it. Or like if I put something on the Seneschal thing where I'm like, I'm thinking about, trying to help run an event, or, these are the things I volunteered for so far. What do you think I should do next? Like, I don't know that I'm going to get that much of a reaction because it's not as easy or as quick. Whereas most of the time when people are scrolling on Facebook, the number one thing that gets reactions is pictures. So I think the difference that we see in how quickly popular the Artificers Guild became versus the other two has a lot to do with that, because it's just not as quick and easy to react and get interactions going on those pages because of the nature of what it is. So I guess what we might want to do is think about, if someone's like, oh, I'm thinking about writing some lore for blank, like maybe we ask advice, because people a lot of times will want to react to it if you're asking for advice versus just being like, hey, I wrote elemental lore, like, cool, good for you. But if I say, hey, I wrote elemental lore, I don't know how this works with ogres who also happen to be like weirdly elementally based creatures in our game. Like if I do that, or if I say, hey, what does your species think of elementals. Like, does your species have an opinion on this race? You know, does anyone want to work with me on that? Then it's more, you're going to get more reaction that way, I guess. Or if you're like asking for advice about, okay, I want to run a class or I want to run an event, like, can I get advice on blank thing? Like, maybe we could get more interaction going on the pages that way. Because I just don't know if we're just posting our own portfolios and just posting, hey, I wrote some lore. I don't know that that's ever really going to take off, I guess, is my only concern. Thoughts?
Cool. I think Rem is next. I don't think we had anyone else say next after Garnet.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump in real quick for my 2 cents on the Chroniclers Guild. Since it is a newer guild, obviously it's a little harder to kind of see the same kind of growth as the 2 older guilds that have been established. And I think Garnet and a few others have brought up a great point that the intangibleness of lore and the intangibleness of kind of what the Chroniclers Guild brings leads me to believe that creating better venues of accessibility to show their creative side of the lore or building up the social culture of Belegarth would be beneficial to look into, like on a guild administrative level. You know, and we can collaborate together and say, hey, you know, we know a lot of people are interested in this, but the direction of it and the impact of it and the accessibility of it is very different than Artificer or Seneschal, where Seneschal is very much boots on the ground and Artificer is just, it's blowing up right now. Like, this is just a great time for it. So, you know, and some people have already put it up in chat. Podcast, yes. Having an official YouTube channel for Chroniclers Guild that is associated with the parent channel of the Belegarth YouTube channel, yes. Any other social media accounts, you know, and helping people find these things with accessibility, because I do know technology is an issue, having the right tools is an issue, time is an issue, but by presenting these things and saying, hey, you know, we are backing you up on this, let's make sure you have the right stuff you need to explore those creative avenues to see what works for the Chroniclers Guild, I think would be a good step forward, just to make sure they feel supported by the rest of the community.
Awesome. Super good thoughts. Let's see. I think we had, Carps, you wanted to make a note?
Hello. So this is in response to, well, partially in response to the Seneschal Guild and how we can bolster recruitment for people for Seneschal Guild. So I'm a squire, and I see a lot of squires here, which is awesome. But for some reason, I would expect there to be a lot more squires who are also guild members. And I think that that's certainly something to look more into. As a squire, I try to encourage other friends of mine who are squires to look into the guilds. And other squires who are here, I encourage you guys to do the same. A lot of the stuff that we're doing for our squireships also are pretty heavy into the similar stuff that the guilds are doing. So I don't know if that's untapped potential, but I see a lot less squires or knights involved with the guilds as I would imagine should. Yeah. Well, I mean, other than word of mouth and encouraging people in the similar groups as us to do the same as us, I don't know other ways to do it, but that's just something I've noticed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those thoughts. As Sin noted that she'd heard some dissent over people earning knighthoods, also becoming guild masters. In regards to the official guild administration's position on that, we are totally fine with that. More masters is great regardless of how we get them. So, you know, if we get some double peers, if we get some triple peers, if we get some quadruple peers, that would be amazing. If anybody's able to actually accomplish that. It's totally a thing over in the SCA. I believe it's a thing over in Ampguard. So it would be great to have it here as well. So as far as official position of the guild's administration, we're all for it. So Sita, I believe, called next here.
Yeah, so on that, so I actually do have both master and knight. And the way I think of it, because I've had this conversation with some people before. The way I think of it is that I'm here to serve the community, and it's like professional development to be a servant for the community. It's more opportunities to learn, more opportunities to grow. And if anybody has any issues with it, I mean, that's what I would say, and that's what I would hope that anybody who is seeking multiple titles, that it's not about seeking multiple titles. It's about seeking multiple opportunities, different avenues of growth, and development to be a better community member and a better mentor.
And to note with that, also the more avenues you have of teaching people as a peer, the more you'll be able to get your students that come to you into the track that best fits them. So that's one thing that Oroku has noted occasionally is he's like, oh, I really need to get my seneschal in, because then if someone comes to me who is more service oriented than necessarily fighting oriented, perhaps the seneschal guild might be a better fit for them, and I need to be able to have that multifaceted ability to go, okay, well, maybe knighthood's not quite what you're looking at, but maybe the guild master, I can help with that instead, or some, depending on what the person's wanting. Obviously work with your student, find out what they're actually looking for and what their goals are, but there's all sorts of avenues available. And multiple peerages is totally a thing too. Did anybody else have any thoughts on that? Okay. Real quick, I just wanted to mention some things that had been brought up in the Q&A as potential ways that we can help some of the other guilds and get up foot traffic and such. What are you working on Wednesday or Thursday has been a really good thing over in the Artificer Guild, so perhaps something similar to that could be tried to be started over in the Seneschal and Chronicler Guild pages of, hey, what are you working on? What's your progress on it? Stuff like that. Google Forms going out, being like, what are ways that we as the guild can help, you in the community? Some people may not be comfortable responding to Google Forms, but for some people, no worries, Antoinette. For some people, maybe writing out their concerns or their thoughts might be the best mode of communication for them. I know another thing that's been brought up in a previous guild meetings is getting a better web presence for us. There's been thoughts of having our own pages on the official Belegarth website rather than just the wiki. Do we know if anything has progressed with that?
That would involve Darian editing the website, which doesn't happen very often. But if that is something we would really like to pursue, I can turn up my level of pester, and pester him some more. He's pretty used to that. The other thing is the official website does have a blog section that's pretty not used very well or updated all that often. We could, instead of pestering for a specific section, inundate him with blog posts and pester him to update that. Oh, I know it hasn't been updated in years. So we could use that as a function. But if we really do want our own section, I could pester him for that. Though knowing full well that it likely won't get updated very often unless we found someone who he would let in the back end of the website. I don't have that kind of tech skill, so I think it's a WordPress based website, question mark. I'd have to ask him, but like the website doesn't get updated that often, so I'm not sure how functional it is. I could pester for like a link, like a more like, hey, we have guilds, they're a thing, and then leave it at that with links back to the wiki and to our Facebook pages, because that's easier and would not involve constant updating, which doesn't often happen.
Fair. Sita, did you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've actually broached this topic because this is a recurring topic, like Anij said. It's come up at literally every guild meeting we have had since we've started having guild meetings. Is web presence and visibility. The wiki is really good, but also the wiki is very confusing for some people, despite many efforts to make it more visible and more accessible. So I actually have reached out to Darian and also Fidel because one of the other things that has come up in tandem with this topic is raising funds for the guild. So raising funds for the guild and web presence often come up with each other because people say, okay, well, what if we were to pay for our own website? So we're not just updating links on the wiki, or, if we can't do the main Belegarth website, what are other options? Could we pay for some kind of streaming service or whatever? So I've actually reached out already to Darian and Fidel, and I'll follow up with them because it's been a while. Conversation kind of petered out because this was, I think, right about the time that quarantine hit. So, everybody kind of went in other priorities. But we do have an answer now for raising guild funds. The mechanism to be able to raise guild funds is already addressed in the bylaws, in the Belegarth bylaws, and I can pull that up right now. Actually, I'll pull that up here in just a moment. But basically, what's that?
The bylaws are just you would have to donate earmarked funds specifically for the guilds, and then it gets approved and it goes into a specific sub account marked guilds.
Yes, correct. And then we would have that money and that access. Now that being said, it would be great, in my opinion, to be able to have at least some kind of link or menu or something on the main Belegarth page. I don't think it has to be anything super crazy. I think, same thing with like the Book of War. We just have a concise list of what's going on, and it's just there, and we don't update all that often. So I think we're talking about our first updates with the Artificer Guild in some time to like paperwork and all that stuff. So it's something that I think we could kind of set it and forget it. But that would perhaps be more visibility for not only the Artificer Guild, but for all the guilds, especially the path to peerage and what membership means. Those are things that people are frequently confused on.
Okay, sounds good.
So TLDR, I'll follow up with Darian and I'll post what the response is in the guild meeting notes.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're in our last 10 minutes here. Was there any other topics that anyone wanted to bring up? Sorry, you only had 10 minutes left. I meant for it to be more time, but. Go ahead.
So one thing that I'm not sure if we've already addressed is pushing visibility with guild regalia. Uh, we have a lot of people in the guilds, especially the Artificer Guild, and we are starting to get more people wearing their guild regalia on the field. Or, of course, we don't have a field to be on right now, but now is an excellent opportunity for people to be working on their guild regalia. But I see mostly guild regalia happening with the Artificer Guild. And I think that in part is because it's easier for artificers to create their guild regalia because they're already crafters. However, I think especially for chroniclers and seneschal, the guilds that are trying to push more recruitment, getting that guild regalia on current masters, journeymen, apprentices will also help. And masters just in general really holding their apprentices accountable for getting their guild regalia done, I think would be a good thing. And also cross guild collaboration. If there are apprentices in Seneschal or Chroniclers that don't have the skills or the access to tools to create their own, there are, I'm sure, plenty of apprentices or guild members, Artificer Guild members, who would be more than willing to help out or do a trade, or, oh, you help me with this thing, I'll help you with that thing. I think there are more opportunities to collaborate there and help each other out as well.
Definitely. Master Antoinette had some thoughts on that?
I am definitely going to make the point that between the active Essentials Guild Masters, I'm pretty sure that none of us wear our, for my camera thingy back on, fancy stoly things that we decided were our piece of regalia, because we don't think about it. We just start doing stuff in the morning, and I'm like halfway through the day, and I'm like, oh, I should probably be wearing that. So that's something we have discussed as a group and are working to get better at. So we're sorry.
Okay, Toddler?
Something that's a little bit of a side note to beat a dead horse on the Chronicler Guild. But something that I personally would like to see a little bit more of, which, and again, I understand this can be very personal because our lore is so personal to us, but we have an opportunity, because we have living lore and incorporating our daily aspects of what is happening to us at events, and ways that we can incorporate that. Like, Cord has, like, his character has a completely white eye because he took this awesome arrow to the face once, and seeing that incorporated in his garb, in his lore, like, and just incorporating those aspects into our lore and into our appearance, I think could really help the Chroniclers Guild, as well as like incorporating lore with other people and other characters. So it becomes more of a shared collective rather than this is my 20 pages on the wiki, because that's really, really hard for people to come emotionally involved with.
Really good thoughts. Okay, so we are in the last 5 minutes. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts, questions, etc.? Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess the only other thing that one person's mentioned is with events and stuff that are coming up in classes and things. Perhaps one thing we could do is, instead of just going, okay, who can teach classes, what classes can you teach, that perhaps another thing that we could put out both into the guilds and to the general population of Belegarth is, what classes do you want to see, what things do you not know how to do that you would like to do. We may find there's things that we don't think are super special, but some people really want to know about. There could be someone that's like, I don't know how to do a buttonhole on my machine. I'd really like to have a class on that, or something like that. Or I don't know, how do you craft the start of a species, or how do you put together a bardic song? How does that rhyming go? Things like that. So that's one thing that I will be looking into, how we can do like Google Forms on and putting out to the community of what classes would you like to see. Hi, Dickie. What classes have you been looking for that you haven't seen pop up yet? So that's just a quick thing that has come up in recent discussions, peerage counts and stuff like that. So thank you for everyone that showed up and shared your thoughts and questions and concerns. Of course, if anything else comes up that you think of later, you can feel free to reach out in the after class discussion. You can reach out over Discord, over Facebook. I try to be super available. So occasionally I will not be able to respond for an evening, but then I'll come back the next day and be like, okay, now I'm ready to talk. And then of course, there's all our other mentors and masters and stuff who are normally super open to answering questions and stuff too. So
Anish,
Mhm.
we quickly just let everyone know that there are 3 guild chair people for specific guilds, and if you have specific guild questions, you are looking for Anish for the Artificers Guild, me for the Essentials Guild, and Archive for the Chroniclers Guild. But Archive has a really busy job and works overnights, so if you can't get a hold of him, one of us might be able to answer your questions, bearing in mind that we may not have all of the answers right away.
Yep. Also, Lady Armstrong is another really good resource for the Artificer Guild. If for some reason you're not able to get a hold of me, she's been one of the other kind of main masterminds that I bounce ideas off of and stuff for the Artificer Guild. So if you have any questions, you can, and if you can't get a hold of me, or if I don't have the answers that you're looking for, feel free to reach out to her too. She's super sweet. So okay, cool. Well, I don't know if Leda's around.
I currently have host privileges because Leda went to go take a break.
Okay, sweet.
Yes, so
she deserved it.
Thank you all. Yeah, right. Thank you all very much. I am going to end the recording now. Assuming I can figure out how to do this. There we go. Awesome. Stop recording. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We have all you need to know about